What is up, everybody? Welcome to Party on Broad. Today, we're putting the football away. We're putting the basketball away. We're talking Flyers hockey, top prospects for the Philadelphia Flyers. This will be part one of an ongoing series where we analyze and break down the top prospects for the Flyers. Tonight, we are doing 1 through 5, and oh my gosh, we have a lot to talk about. Joining me for the first time in a long time, my main man Tyson. We broke down the NHL draft a couple of years ago. It's been a minute. What's going on, Tyson?
Man, not much. Happy to be back. It has been a minute, and it's a great time to talk about these things as a Flyers fan. It's some future excitement. It actually looks like, I think years ago we talked about how, hey, is this a rebuild? Is this not a rebuild? And now we're like, it's a rebuild. Let's go. So now there's some actual really good things to talk about, which is great.
Yeah, I love. I mean, you know me. I do love myself a good rebuild, and it seems like Danny Briere and the Flyers have kind of rejuvenated the excitement level in Philadelphia, kind of getting this thing started. Obviously, number one, let's break it down. Matvei Michkov is the number one prospect according to Tyson. I'll throw it to you, Tyson. What are some of the strengths of Matvei Michkov?
Man, it's funny. It's hard to know where to start. Like, the first thing that always comes up with him is he's an elite scorer. We've just seen that time and time again with him. And on top of him being an elite scorer, like, he's just so creative offensively. Like, he oozes confidence. Some clips have been going around of him playing in the preseason in the KHL in Russia. And you just see his, like, willingness to try insane things with the puck over and over and over again. He's one of those guys that, like, his pace increases when he has the puck on his stick. And that is such a rare trait for players, is what makes him elite. Think of, like, McDavid. Now, again, he doesn't have the speed like McDavid. That's not his thing. We'll get into that more in a bit. But it's more so this idea of when the puck's on his stick, his pace increases. Last year in the KHL, it was interesting. I think had he not been in the KHL, in Russia's top league, I think he would have been the second overall pick in the draft. If not second, then third, right? No offense to Adam Fantilli, who was kind of the consensus second, who again didn't go second. He went third. And with Fantilli in particular, like, good player, excellent, but Michkov just has this other level of scoring ability. He kind of projects as a goal scorer at the NHL level. And yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot to really knock him on. Other than just his contract, which we can get into a little bit.
We did a top prospects in Philly sports show, and I put this guy in, I think, at number 3, which is nuts, considering, like, he's, not going to be putting on the orange and black for quite some time. But that's how, like he's the next star, right? Like, that's his seal.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a superstar. I think he's a game breaker. He is very rare in that regard. The hard thing with him, again, is just last year, because of the sanctions against Russia with the IIHF, he could not play at any international tournaments against his peers. And then he wasn't able to play in things like the World Championship, where, say, like, guys like Leo Carlsson on Sweden, who went second overall, played, or Adam Fantilli played, and where Bedard put up insane numbers at the World Juniors. The year before, in the shortened World Junior, Michkov played, and he was at pace and at par with Bedard. And at the time, they were both 16, which is insane, both playing in this under 20 tournament. And they were both being labeled as, like, they were pretty close at the time. Now, obviously, Bedard had this huge step forward. Michkov, because of all the things that we've talked about, plus the first team he was on in the KHL, didn't play him much. He got a loan, kind of like similarly to soccer, and then he just lit it up. Had Ovechkin type numbers there. I believe the record for what a lot of analytics people call draft year +1 in goals is 13 by Ovechkin, and there's a lot of prediction that he'll annihilate that. So we will see, but I think there's a lot of reason for Flyers fans to be very excited about this player.
He's like, his KHL videos, like, this year are going to be like the new Ben Simmons practice highlight videos. Like, people just gushing over this kid and freaking out. Is it justifiable? Like, is he the next Ovechkin?
I don't know that his ceiling's quite that high. I mean, we're talking the greatest goal scorer ever, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm talking about a guy that could score 40 goals, 100 points in the NHL for a long time. Yeah, I think that is in his wheelhouse of possibility. If it's anything less than like average point per game player over the course of a career, I'd be shocked.
And he's been kind of experimenting with center a little bit lately, right? Like, so that's
Yeah.
been. And I also read that he's kind of molding his game from Sidney freaking Crosby. Just crazy exciting.
Yeah, there's even a comparison there in terms of his build, right? Because he's not tall. And when you watch him play, like he's modeling a lot of like Crosby's thing is Crosby's not big either. He's under 6 feet, but he's so strong that you can't knock him off the puck down low. And Crosby's never been the fastest skater either. And so there has been this comparison made between the two of them. Like he's just going to be power down low over and over and over again. And the way that he sort of positions himself, the way he like uses his edges is absolutely incredible to see, where it's almost like his hips go sideways compared to his skates, right? And so guys think you're going one way or another. He just finds a way to just create chances. He's like so deadly below the hash marks, which for a player that's small, that's sometimes rare. But just like Crosby is deadly below the hash marks. There's a similarity there for sure. Very different players in other respects, but I get that comparison, absolutely.
Love it. We have Pat in the house saying, "What's up, fellas? This episode is right in my wheelhouse." We are talking top 5 prospects in the system, and this will be part 1, and we will continue these as we get ready for hockey season. Let's get to areas of improvement. I'll throw our graphic right back up. Obviously, it's the contract. That's the elephant in the room, man. There's been a lot of kind of things thrown out there. He's coming over in 2 years and 3 years. What are some areas to improve for Michkov?
I mean, it's funny when we say contract, that just tells you how good he is, right? It's like, yeah, that's the biggest problem. And same thing, Russia's really unpredictable right now. Whether it's 2 or 3 years, time will tell. We'll see. But in other weaknesses, I think the two that have come up the most with him would be top speed. So he does not appear to have game-breaking speed. Again, he's not a bad skater. Like that was the same thing with Bedard this year. It was like, what's his biggest weakness? He doesn't have game-breaking speed, but he's not a bad skater. It's just he doesn't have that other gear that we're used to seeing some stars in today's NHL have. So again, that's something that could even be improved a little bit. I don't think he's done growing. I don't think he's done gaining strength either, and I think that will help. The other one was just defensive play. Like oftentimes he just kind of doesn't seem to give a rip defensively. But that also kind of Ovechkin was a similar comparison at that age sometimes, and that's kind of a fun one with him, right? It's just like I've been watching a lot of Messi lately since he's made his debuts in MLS, and sometimes you see him just kind of like he'll miss a play, and then he's just like going to stand there and walk back, and the ball kind of go by him. And some people I've watched stuff with will get upset and be like, "Why is he not? What's he doing?" And I'm like, "It doesn't matter. He'll score later. It's fine." And there's a little bit of that to his game too, where he's just much more willing to be like, it's fine. Yeah. So if you're able to break games open whenever you want, which is kind of his MO, then it's not as big of an issue. So.
Yeah. All right, let's roll on. Number 1 was Matvei Michkov. Number 2 prospect for the Philadelphia Flyers, no surprise, Cutter Gauthier. Throw it to you, Tyson. Tell me the strengths of Cutter Gauthier.
Yeah, I mean, right now, I'm going to say his biggest strength is going to be his shot. He was considered to have the best shot likely in his draft year. He's a pure shooter. But secondly, now I would say it's his maturity. Like he was just playing at the World Junior Showcase for the U.S. Last week, and he looked like a man playing against boys. Like he is so mature in his overall game, just dominant with the puck. He just has an NHL ready shot already. He was, most scouts were saying his shot was NHL ready by the time he was 16. So, I mean, it was just one of these things where you're just looking at him and being like, okay, there's other areas of his game that need to come together, but that shot alone means if he can get open, he's going to score at the next level. I actually think that he could play in the NHL this year. I think that he's not going to because the Flyers are not rushing him, and I think he wants to go back to college for another year. The team he's on is going to have an exceptional year. It wouldn't be surprising to see him and his team make a run for the Frozen Four. And so I think that's appealing to the Flyers. That's appealing to him, especially because the Flyers are, as we said, in full rebuild mode. So, I mean, sometimes, I think of the Leafs rebuild a little bit where after the Matthews drafts, they inserted 3 rookies at the same time, Matthews, Marner, and Nylander, all at the same time. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Flyers are aiming for some sort of similar trajectory, kind of allowing some contracts to expire, moving some guys around, and then immediately allowing those guys to have big minutes. So, so that's the strengths. That's what he brings to the table. Again, I think he is NHL ready. He won't play in the NHL this year. I mean, he played for the U.S. at the World Championships against men again this year, and he was dominant too. So most other teams would love to say their number one prospect is Cutter Gauthier. And so it's absolutely crazy that he's number 2.
Exactly. I like the fact that the Flyers are going to commit and take their time. Like the plan is like what, like a 3-year window, at least as I'm not into it as much as you are, but like, kind of take your lumps the next 2 years. Year 3, hit the ground rolling with Michkov and this guy Cutter. Is that fact?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance that Cutter will go pro after this year. I think the Flyers have incentive to. He might even get some games at the end of the year. NCAA prospects, it's interesting the way the NHL has them structured. Every league has a different agreement. So if he gets to the end of his junior year, he might go, you know what? I don't think that I don't want to sign with the Flyers, and then he becomes a free agent. So usually after sophomore years, like teams push hard every max bonuses. So I think he'll be in earlier, but I think that trajectory is absolutely right. I think that they're going to be looking hard to have that group in sooner rather than later of young guys. And depending on who they pick in this year's draft, I mean, this year's draft is not as deep as last, but top 5 is still really good. So
from what I read, it's really good with defensemen, which is exactly what I think the Flyers are looking for. Patrick says, do you think the Flyers get Austin Matthews next year? Any thoughts on that?
I don't. And I'm not secretly. I am a Leafs fan, but I don't see it. I think if he doesn't go back to Toronto, I think he's going West Coast.
All right. What are some areas of improvement for Cutter Gauthier?
I think it's a funny one, but sometimes he can shoot almost too often. Like sometimes shots from distance, things like that. That was a transition last year from the league he was playing in. He was playing for the U.S. National Development Program, plays overlapping in the U.S. Hockey League. Sometimes you can just get trigger happy a little bit in that league, and so it was at times a little bit of a transition for him. So sometimes it's looking to more slow down the play, not just shooting off the rush, looking for other opportunities. All these things are normal things for players his age too, especially that have dominated at specific levels. But I think another question too is he going to be a center or a winger? So when the Flyers, when Fletcher, rest in peace, right, originally drafted him, maybe not. When they originally drafted him, he drafted him as potentially a center. So he played both, and the idea was he plays center. But now there's been leanings that he's played more wing internationally. So there's a question of where he'll fall, but regardless, they got a really good potential top line forward coming real quick.
Love it. All right, let's roll on to number 3. Love the comments, Pat. Number 3, let's get into Tyson Foerster. I feel like we've been talking about this guy for quite some time. Tyson, tell me about Tyson Foerster. What are his strengths?
Yeah, I think we talked about him the last time we really covered the draft. Actually, ironically, but for Forster, yeah, it's his shot. I mean, again, when he was a prospect in the OHL, it was NHL caliber shot. That's still there. He played 8 games for the Flyers this year. He actually scored quite a few times. I believe he had 4 goals, like pretty crazy for the 8 games that he played. Right? I mean, that's a 50-goal pace. Obviously, we don't think he'd keep that up. I don't think he's that type of player, but a lot of that had a lot to do with just his shot. Like if he gets open, he can rip it. And he's done well in the AHL, putting up really good numbers. He's done well for the Flyers in limited duty. He's going to compete for a spot this year. I think he's probably going to potentially slot in as a second line left winger come this year. And so that's a big one. Obviously, he can play the point on the power play because of that shot. And for him, it's more like he gets open, he rips it. That's his game. So that seems to be his trajectory still.
I feel like we've been talking about it for so long, man. It's crazy. We have another comment from Patrick. Thoughts on Erik Karlsson to Pittsburgh? Is this the Sidney Crosby go around with this move?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the Penguins are doing one last hurrah before that core three otherwise of Malkin, Crosby, and Letang kind of fade off into the sunset. So this is kind of it.
Yeah. John Jones says, how far are the Flyers away from being a contender for the Stanley Cup? It's going to be some time, but I think we kind of touched on it, like year 3, year 4, I think the Flyers need to take their time. Don't jump into anything. Do it naturally. Do it organically. And any thoughts on that, Tyson?
Yeah, I mean, I even think 3 is pushing it, like 5.
Yeah.
Like if you think about that, like a lot of the teams, like you think about the Oilers, a lot of the Oilers' struggles continue to be, as they can't find bottom 6 depth very well in forwards or even bottom pairing defense. They have to sign a lot of guys and overpay a lot of guys to fill in those gaps. And a lot of that is because they rebuilt twice, right? The first rebuild was Nugent Hopkins, Taylor Hall, Jordan Eberle, and then they basically traded all of them except for Nugent Hopkins. Brought it back with McDavid and Draisaitl, right, which were amazing picks. But if you look at the rest of their roster and go, find me other Oilers draft picks, and again, you're talking over 20 players, there's a big question mark there, right? Yeah. No one can name any. And so their issue is always they cannot seem to develop other players. So the Flyers can take these home run swings. Like, you're talking in the future, you got Michkov, you got Gautier, but you got to have other guys in there too. Those guys that you're going to get later on are going to take longer to develop. And so 3 to 5 year window, the average, I think, is about 3.5 years for a player after drafted. So you're talking by the time those guys start becoming into their primes, which is a younger prime now, is like earlier 20s to mid 20s, that's going to be at least 3 to 5.
Yeah, I agree. Just saying though, Tyson, you can kind of flip the switch in hockey, and Ovechkin had over 100 points his rookie year, as I'm reading right now. All right. Forster showed some flashes of promise. Thoughts on Sam Ersson with the contract extensions? Does this mean Carter Hart is trade bait? Does not look good for Carter Hart right now. I don't know what the vibe is in Philly. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Flyers could go either way with that. I mean, goalies tend to play longer and last longer and take longer to mature. And so Hart is still in the window where it's not the end of the world if he would stay with the Flyers a few more years and still be in his prime. The question is whether he wants to be. And also the question is what kind of assets can the Flyers get for him if they don't think their window is now, or they want to push it ahead a little bit more. I think he's a really good trade option for sure. I don't think it has anything to do with Ersson, honestly. I think Ersson will compete for a backup position this year. If not, he'll be an AHL starter. I like him. I think he's a decent prospect at goaltending. He had some struggles last year, but it seemed like every bad game he had an exceptional one. So,
circling back to Forster, what are some areas for him to improve moving forward?
I think the main one is, again, it's his top speed. Like, he got drafted first shot was kind of a joke at the time. And that's not wrong. He has, though, increased his speed a lot and increased his stride. And a lot of the things that we had talked about years ago was like, oh, boy, is this going to be a major holdup for him? He has improved on. So, again, it's still this idea of he's not going to burn past you. But his skating isn't as much as a red flag as it used to be. And I do think I would be surprised if he doesn't start with the Flyers this year and get power play time.
Yep. All right, let's keep it rolling, man. Number 3 was Tyson Foerster. Going on to number 4 is Oliver Bonk. Oliver Bonk is the 4th best Flyers prospect. Tyson, tell me about Oliver Bonk.
Yeah, Mr. Bonk. His father was a longtime NHLer for the Ottawa Senators. And he played for the London Knights in the OHL, and he was one of the Flyers' 2 first-round picks in this past year's draft. And so for him, I think a lot of scouts grew on him over the year And a lot of that had to do with the fact that he shows he has a pretty good overall toolkit. In other words, he's pretty big. He's over 6 feet. He's pretty strong for his age. He has a really long reach. Sometimes when I watch him out there with the way he could reach for the puck, he reminds me of his dad quite a bit, actually, in that regard. He's really good defensively. He has really good defensive awareness. And he has a really good toolkit. He's a little raw, is what some scouts would say, meaning he's going to just need some time. That's common for defensemen, so it's not like a red flag so much as it's just a reality. But yeah, in general, he is looking like a pretty solid potential. I wouldn't call him a first pair defenseman. I think he's going to be a top 4 though. They can play in all situations.
Okay. And then we go to areas to improve for Oliver Bonk. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, his main one, I think, that people have talked about is offensive awareness. Like, his offensive ceiling is kind of low, I think, meaning, is he going to be a 40-point guy? I'm not so sure, maybe. Which, again, that's decent for a defenseman. I think he might end up topping out around the 30-35 mark as career highs. And so sometimes he can get a little lost if he's got to try to carry the puck or make plays in certain situations. But, again, some of that will come with maturity. For him, I think simplicity will be best at the next level, and I think that he will be able to do it. So,
all right. Another question from Patrick. Will John Tortorella be the head coach when this thing turns around?
Oh, boy. I think with Tortorella, you never know. It depends on the one thing that I always laugh at, I always want to say Twitter still, but now it's X. On X is that he notoriously, Tortorella went off about people trying the lacrosse goal and how disrespectful it was. And for that reason, in particular, Michkov loves to do it and has done it a ton. So there's a question of, like, are they going to rub? Oh, yeah, they're going to rub for sure. Yeah. And so a lot of it will determine, like, Torts has shown himself to change over the years. Like, he used to kind of have this sort of burn out every player in 3 years sort of mentality, and he's changed quite a bit. So it wouldn't surprise me if he sticks through it. Like, if he's going to stick through it now, as long as he can, not rub against all the young guys and continue to work with them, I think he could see it through.
Love it. Anthony chimes in saying Bonk will be a superstar. Like, when I think of – so we haven't done a podcast together in quite some time, but I vividly remember, Tyson, the show where we were doing a top 10 prospect ranking, and all those guys were literally, in, at least from you to me, like, there are 80% of the top stars in Philadelphia. That's how, like, high we were on these guys. So it's fun to kind of – we're back. We're back, Tyson. Yeah. That's not what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Torch is the coach of the year next year. I kind of hope not.
You want Macklin Calabrini. That's what you want next year. You don't want to be you want a future number 1 center. That's what you want.
Yeah, we the Flyers need to slow roll this thing and do it right. All right, let's get into our last prospect of the show. Again, we've got my man Tyson on the program. This is part 1 of a long, ongoing series. Number 5 for the Flyers, Emil Andrae. Tyson, yes. Who is this guy?
I think we talked about him at one point too.
Yes,
so
sir.
He's been around for a while. So he is one of my secret favorite prospects outside the NHL because he's also small. He's like 5'9", but he does not play like it. So he has absolutely no problem hammering opposing forwards physically, and he pulls it off because he's pretty solid. He has elite edge work with his skates. So when the puck's on his stick on the blue line, he's really fun to watch. He runs the blue line kind of east-west like really well, and it's super fun to watch. He was a captain for Sweden at the World Juniors. I believe he played World Championships too. And a question for him was always like his size. I wrote that his area of improvement, like how, and you can't really, it's kind of hard to improve your size, right? Like how do you get taller? I don't know, do the whole Gonzo thing, stretch it out, Muppets reference. But outside of that, I don't know that you could do much else, right? So for him, it was more like gaining strength an ability to protect the puck well. And for him, when he's under pressure, being able to get out of those situations using his edges, and he can do that now. Charlie O'Connor at the Athletic, who covers the Flyers beat, he suggested that he thinks Andrae could compete for a spot this year. Thinks he should. Depending on what the Flyers want to do, right, with their rebuild, he may find himself beginning in the American League, but he should play in the AHL this year. I think I'd be surprised if he went back to Sweden. You never know. But he could compete for a spot again. He's not a superstar, but I could see him running the Flyers power play in the near future and just becoming like kind of a fun little cult following sort of player, right? Like a guy who's just gonna hammer somebody and be small and then kind of set up a cool scoring opportunity on the power play and just be an overall fun player to watch. So he's my number 5. My 4, 5, and 6, or not my 4. My 5, 6, and 7 are all pretty close, which we'll get into later in terms of they could kind of move around and be pretty close. But yeah, there's Andrae.
I love it. And what are some areas that he needs to improve on besides the size? Anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think like he's going to have a transition to North American style play. Like there's a smaller rink, so right now he does have more space to get himself out of trouble with his skating. So the question will be, is he going to get filled in? Like if he plays for the Flyers and they play Washington and Tom Wilson's, coming down on him, how's he going to be able to get out of that situation with less time and less space? I think he'll have a transition there. So outside of size, I would say it's the ability to he's going to have to move the puck quicker. Is probably a better way to put it. He's not going to be able to hold on to it as much as he's used to.
All right. So just to quickly recap, part 1 of our Flyers top prospect series. Number 1, Michkov. Number 2, Cutter. Number 3, Forster. Number 4, Bonk. And number 5, Andrae. I don't really know when our next show will be. I would just suggest make sure you follow EOP Sports on X to make sure, because we tweet out, X out. I don't even know what to call it anymore.
Zeet? We zeet out? It all sounds wrong.
Schedule.
It all sounds wrong.
But we'll go through 6 through 10, and then there's a little kind of discussion that we'll be doing some 2024 NHL draft content down the road, which would be really, really fun because, a lot of excitement with the Flyers right now. Tyson, tell everyone where we can find you, man.
Yeah, you can find me on X at Quibel Tyson, and I do everything sort of draft related, prospects related. It's kind of my thing. So that's a good place to follow me.
All right. So that, my man, Tyson, make sure you go check him out. And we will be back for number 6 through 10. Tonight, we are doing an Eagles show, talking Eagles versus Ravens. That will be going live in about 30 minutes. Again, thank you, everyone, for the comments. For Tyson, from myself, stay awesome, everyone.